So now for this video, we start off with the Judah turn. They kind of are laying their markers out, letting the Philistines know, hey, look, I'm grabbing some of this neutral territory. You want to fight, we'll fight. I'm stronger than you. Deal with it. If you want to, you know, concentrate to the north, maybe we won't clash. Maybe we will. But if you come into my area and cut me off, I'm going to go to war. They're also going into Jerusalem, and because they don't have a lot of cities near them that are terribly dangerous, they're going to play the secret entrance. This is actually... and they essentially are able to win the siege for free without having to roll any dice or fight it. There's no cities that are larger near them. There's a lot of other twos. Kirmob is the only one that they'd really have to concentrate on that's higher. So they want to get that event played and take as little loss as possible. So they're able to get some good growth. They weren't able to move any further. And finally we have the Philistines, and I've got to think about what they're going to do. They probably do not want to piss off Judah. They're weaker. On the other hand, pursuing Tyre, that seems dangerous too, and there is a lot of free space up here in the north that they can grab. So they may be tempted to go for the peaceful route. And the Philistines have expanded into the north. Now, by taking, what is this, Beth Horon, they end up in a position that is really kind of telling Judah, we're going to war. But maybe things will develop a little bit more. Maybe they'll be able to get more troops on the board, whatever. But the leadership factor, unless you play this with the, hey, you can pile the troops wherever you like, the leadership factor is going to be quite telling. And that's a key here. And all the other players have to, at this point, be looking at Judah and saying, that is a country that I have to worry about real badly. In fact, Aramea is kind of upset that they're tied down against Tyre at this point. Moab is considering, well, if I can finish Edom off, I want to hit Judah. But Judah wants to strike the Philistines early and wipe them out before things get, before anybody else gets really seriously powerful. And at that point, Judah will be large as well as better led, and it'll really probably take a coalition of everyone against them. All right, so where do we end up after that? Well, the action marker goes away. We flip a new one over. We're going to have another action phase here. And we go to a resource production phase. This isn't too difficult. So in order to speed this up, well, I'm going to look at Aramea. They have a base, which is actually defined here, of 47 resources. They're missing a hill spot. That loses them 2, so they're down to 45. And they've got a couple of additionals here, which add a total of 1, so they get 46 resources. It just gets added to their total. They have lots more money now. And we'll do that with all the others. Just calculate their resources out, and then this will pop off and we go to another event phase, etc. Okay, except that I forgot something. Players have an option to play event counters before this takes place. And Tyre's holding a decreased resources, which they're going to hit Aramea with. Now, if you remember, we made 47. I'm going to take that away for a moment. Was that what they made? Hold on. I could go back and listen. They had a base of 47. They were down to 45, 46. So they should have one more, I guess. I don't remember. I may have added. Anyway, that's where we are. Okay. But decreased resources reduces each area, each physical area by 1. Now, that's going to be tough because you got to count across the board. But luckily, there's ways of kind of cheating this, which is to say, Maramea. Okay, that's not going to be so easy. So basically, take Damascus out of this equation, right? I had a 46 base. Let's just take Damascus as 3 out of this. That puts me to 43. Wow, that doesn't make much sense. Okay. This one produced 1, so it's going to produce 0. So now I'm at 42. I'll add Damascus in a moment. But with 42, everything here is a hill area or an other city that produced. Those produced 2, so by subtracting 1, I'm halving it. So what was I at? Wait, 46, 43, 42. So I only produced 21 plus Damascus is 2, which is 23. 23 and 21 puts me to 44. And yes, you can see, like with the die rolling, you might have to do a little bit of mental and arithmetic gymnastics, or else a lot of really annoying counting to make this game work. If you end up missing a point or two, hey, who cares? Those are big numbers, right? Well, I don't know. But it's kind of not the easiest way to handle these things as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, I'll run through other people's events and then come back and show you what the total resource track looks like. What's not covered is how besieged cities are handled, or at least that I couldn't find covered. But playing with such sparse rules, I feel comfortable in saying, it's probably not covered. So I'll just make it up. And the only reasonable thing is, look, if your city's besieged, nobody's getting any resources out of that area. It's really kind of a war zone at the time. So I'm just not going to count those for tire. So looking through these rules, and I am beginning to see the problems with them, I'm hitting more issues. One, I found out in the diplomacy rules, there's a discussion of when in the same area they must obey stacking restrictions as if they were one force, i.e. 4 armies in one area combined unless a leader is present when it's 4. That was stacking for movement, not stacking. There was no stacking defined per area in any other place in this rules that I saw. Wow. And then over in the, what the hell, somewhere in the minors thing, and I kind of knew this existed, but I wanted to look it up. When invading the minor country, an invading country controls only the areas which he has armies at the end of a turn, when a control marker is placed in it. Well, that's the only place where it talks about when control markers are placed. Now, the stacking one, I can actually accept that that would just be a general rule, except that there aren't rules to cover what happens when you violate stacking because maybe a leader dies or something. Maybe it's covered in the event itself. I like my solution better. And I'm going to keep playing with it. Because I don't feel like this game was carefully thought out in a lot of ways. Here's the other one. The control markers. I don't buy this. I do not like this. It just doesn't make sense. It breaks the magic that you get out of the action track if control markers are placed at the end of the complete turn. So again, I'm playing the way I started misplaying these rules. Again, I don't think that things were as carefully thought out as they could have been. I think there's a nice basis of a game here, but I don't think as written it really is going to work. So I'm going to play it, you know, as I interpreted it, skimming through it, because I've played a lot of games kind of this nature, and I'm immediately seeing these flaws with the rules that, you know, I kind of assumed would work differently. I think my assumptions work better than the way the rules are written, because a lot more special cases are going to have to be added to cover. And I don't want to do that work. I did that work already, you know, trying to figure out how the stacking is going to work. I don't want to do it again to try to figure out what the designer maybe meant, when I don't think the designer particularly is very good at, nailing down a solid game. And so here's our finishing points for this resource event, or action, or whatever. And we can see the Philistines are doing quite well. Actually, Aramea would be doing better, as we saw, but as they're a larger area, but they got kind of hosed over by Tyre. And in a sense, there are some real advantages. The Philistines have a lot of production. Judah has to start taking that away from them. So, in a sense, that war is desirable for Judah. And for everyone else, well, the weaker powers need to grow before they can really engage. Moab's an interesting case where they don't have a lot of advantages, but they're kind of weak. You can see their production didn't get them so very high. Now, going back to that thought about the design, etc., this is beginning to feel like an incomplete game. Now, one person suggested, you can go online, and there are some fact sheets and this, that, and the other, and I know you don't like those kind of things. Well, that's the point. Those are probably spur-of-the-moment decisions by the designer, or trying, they may not be any more well thought out than these initial decisions. It's just questions that didn't come up in adequate playtesting time, which probably was not given. I mean, if this was handed out to blind testers, and this is one reason I don't want to do blind testing, but, sort of the expectation is they come back with, in a case of something like this, a rule book like this, I would be coming back with about 3 times as many pages as this rule book of questions, right? Because I believe something should be, really nailed down solidly. I don't want to put that kind of work in. And I don't want to put the work in trying to look up all these changes that maybe are no better than mine. Some of them may be unofficial, where somebody just came up with something and worked it out and tried to spell it out exactly. Well, look, I would rather not deal with spelled out rules exactly. Something like this is actually kind of cool to me. I immediately start to like a game because it's lacking in all the rules. If it provides, and I think this does, a good little framework, it pleases me in some ways that no matter what you did with such a light game to nail it down, it would probably be much uglier and harder. So if the original rules were completely nailed down, that might be okay. It would bloat them. If I have to hunt down to try to create that kind of solid rule book, nah, that's not going to work for me. That's more effort than dealing with the rule book itself. And the rule book itself, I'm kind of happy that I can just kind of throw things in as I like, when I like. But not everybody wants that. And this game, if you pick it up, you're looking at a light game that's a work, that requires some additional effort, either in terms of, like I like to do, making decisions on the fly. I mean, if I was sitting with a bunch of gamers playing this for the first time, I would say, oh, look, there's only 12 pages of rules, we'll explain it. And then when we started looking up and finding problems, hey, let's just vote on what we think should work, Pretty much the same as what I'm doing here, right? People would come up with different ideas. And, if an idea doesn't really work, and we have to do some more gymnastics to fix that idea, well, maybe next time we play, we take a different idea. Probably have forgotten that solution anyway some 2-3 years later. All right, up this one's going.